So coming up this weekend is going to be a very good LFA card. In fact, I would say this is one of the best LFA cards that we have been getting in the last year or so. It's going to be taking place in Brazil, and most importantly, it's going to be broadcast around the same period of time which we would normally be getting a UFC card, because it's taking place on Saturday, broadcast at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. The prelims are going to be free to watch on YouTube, and the main card will be broadcast on UFC Fight Pass. This is a very stacked card. If you are a kind of person that needs to watch MMA on Saturday night, maybe watching UFC as part of your weekend routine, and you're not going to be getting that this weekend, I think this card could be the card to kind of replace that, because it is just genuinely so good. And I do believe a lot of the fighters on this card are going to either be in the UFC soon, or at least be on the Contender Series soon, and maybe, just maybe, other major promotions. But just to kind of quickly look at the card, look at what we're dealing with here. 10-0 versus 13-0 in the co-main event. You go down a little bit. Juan, Pablo, Vieira is going to be fighting on this card. He is a lot of fun, and I mean a lot of fun. Rodrigo Vera is 19-1 in his prime. Still does not have a major contract as well. Maybe a win on this card will change things. Now, I am actually only going to be breaking down 8 of the 14 fights. Part of the reason for that is it's getting pretty late at the moment, and I really want to get the video out tonight, and I also really want to get to sleep so I can hopefully wake up early tomorrow, because my sleep schedule is still just a little bit off, unfortunately, since I did just genuinely get 12 hours of sleep a couple of weeks ago when I was studying for my exams, and I'm still kind of trying to recover from that. Anyway, I do have an article on the We Want Picks website, and you can see that by paying the $10 per month for the membership. But you don't just get my articles, of course. You do get all of what We Want Picks does offer. You get Jacob's bets for the UFC, Angelo's bets for the UFC, Bet Sam's bets for the UFC, my articles for everything non-UFC related, including Road to UFC. And if you use my code in the description, as well as the link Artem, you will be getting 10% off your first membership. Aside from that, of course, as I did just mention, I have uploaded a lot of Road to UFC content on my channel. I've predicted the 4 episodes that are going to be taking place this week. If you're unfamiliar with Road to UFC, I recommend you check it out. It's pretty much the Contender Series, but for fighters from Asia. And I think I can guarantee that a lot of those fights are going to be quite fun. I think the fights have been pretty well matched to at least put on some pretty good entertainment for us this week, in a week which we do not have UFC. Now, without further ado, let's now get into this one here. Dallys Gamma versus Wellington and Madeira is the first fight that I want to talk about. Madeira is a 6'5" welterweight. He is a bit of a grappler, but I actually have been really impressed, with his boxing when I was watching him. Typically, these guys that are very tall for welterweight, because if you can believe it, there are multiple of them from Brazil. One of them fought recently, and I do believe one of them actually signed to the UFC. The guy that lost to Yusaku Kinoshita on the Contender Series did recently sign to the UFC. But Madeira, I do think he's a bit of a raw prospect, I will be honest. I am not fully prepared to kind of jump on his train and say that he should get a shot. I think that he definitely probably still needs at least a few more fights against more experienced opponents for us to know how good he really is. But he is quite impressive to me. He's got a lot of power for a guy with a lanky frame. His grappling's pretty solid. His offensive grappling especially is pretty solid. I did see him get taken down a couple of times, which I don't love seeing, but I think overall he's going to present a pretty tough sort of style for Dallys Gamma to deal with. And Dallys Gamma hasn't really had the best run of it in the promotion. LFA has given him some tough guys, man. Michael Oliveira, who's a very talented fighter, and Reginaldo Jr., who's going to be fighting later on in this card. Both guys he took to the 3rd round, and in the case of Jr., he went the distance with. Gamma, what he doesn't really do very well, in my opinion, is deal with pressure. He can get pressured very easily. He spends a lot of time with his back up against the fence, trying to avoid strikes. And if Madeira can just kind of control the cage on the feet, uses 80-inch reach for this weight class, and just kind of pop shots at him over 3 rounds, I think that he should be able to find a lot of success in this matchup. So I'm going to go with Madeira here, and the reason why I'm not going to go with Madeira by finish is just because Gamma has shown that he can be so tough against pretty solid opponents. So give me Madeira to win this matchup by decision. Now we have Reginaldo Jr. fighting against Gilberto Sousa. Now, I know that Reginaldo Jr. does have a lot of quick first round knockouts, but it was actually his wrestling that I was most impressed with in his most recent matchup against Dallys Gamma, who we just talked about. In that matchup, Reginaldo Jr. on multiple occasions genuinely just picked up Gamma and dunked him down on the ground, and from there did control the fight from side control. It wasn't the best fight in the world, of course, but I do think that that wrestling side of Jr. is something that I would like to see when it comes down to this matchup, because Gilberto Sousa, if he's good at one thing, it is striking. He does have a lot of power. He does have a lot of first round finishes. He actually does have a crazy win on his record as well against this Nielsen Gomez guy who had a very padded 19-2 record, but that's still a 19-2 record that he did beat, and ever kind of since then we haven't seen him look fantastic, but we've seen him fight all over the place in different weight classes. I do think though that Reginaldo Jr. coming out of Fighting Nerds, a guy that is very aggressive on the feet, does like to come forward. I think if he can just kind of avoid the power of Sousa, get some wrestling going in his own sort of offense, I think he's going to look good. And I think this is a pretty good matchup for Reginaldo Jr. to go out there, maybe find a finish over Gilberto Sousa, and just kind of be in from the Fighting Nerds. I think that could potentially be enough to see him on the Contender Series this year. So I'm going to pick Reginaldo Jr. to win this fight by decision, but maybe he could find a knockout on the feet as well. Aieza Bertolso is a fighter that I have been very interested in ever since she made her professional MMA debut. Bertolso is a multiple-time IMMAF amateur world champion. She went 16-1 as an amateur, with her one loss coming pretty early on in her career. And now she's come over to the professional ranks, and I think she's looked quite good. Now, she did have the split decision over Fabrizia Ketlin, but I do think she won that fight. And for the most part, what we do see her try and do is strike from range and then look for takedowns. She's 5'6" at 115 pounds, which is relatively tall for the division, and she does have a very thin frame, and I do worry about her just a little bit. You can kind of tell from this photo, but not really. She doesn't seem to have like a lot of muscle. Now, I do understand that a lot of women strawweights don't really. I just think that she does seem to lack like just kind of a lot of pure strength potentially to get those takedowns that she does try and get pretty often. But once she does get those takedowns, being pretty lanky, it does help her find a lot of submission attempts, and that is what she's been able to utilize throughout her career. She just got a very good win over Janina Silva, and now I do believe that she's getting a bit of a layup against an opponent which I know a lot of people won't recognize, but it is going to look good on her record, because Samara Santos is actually a former One Championship fighter, and to be honest with you guys, she was just kind of... she was used by One Championship, man. You search up Samara Santos on YouTube, and One Championship is just posting highlight reel after highlight reel after highlight reel of her getting smoked by these fighters, and then she took a lot of time off after getting released from the promotion, come out and lost to another prospect. I think she's coming out to lose to Bertolso, honestly, and I think that Bertolso goes out there, gets a submission, and we see her on the Contender Series later this year. Very good prospect, big time amateur record. I think that if she gets matched up well, I think over time we could see Bertolso develop into something special. And now we have Juan Pablo Vieira fighting against Carlos Cavalcante. I know a lot of people are very excited about this fight. I know a lot of people in the Discord, the We Want Picks Discord, are very excited about this fight. And you should be. You should be. This guy is awesome, man. Like, I would consider him a grappler. In fact, he is a grappler. But his striking is nuts. As long as the fight is on the feet, he's coming forward and he's throwing volume. It doesn't even seem like he really has a plan for what he's going to throw. He just throws it. You know, like I've seen him throw head kicks out of nowhere. I've seen him throw flying knees out of nowhere. But what he really wants to do is he wants to get takedowns. And the way that he gets his takedowns is he will dive for his opponent up against the cage, and he will just try and drag them down. And if he doesn't get them down the first time, he'll try it again. And he will just keep on trying. And I know that the fight only lasted 52 seconds. This is actually a pretty good example of this, because Macon Kevin has pretty good initial takedown defense in this fight, and Pablo Vieira just tries to keep on trying to take him down over and over and over again, and eventually he gets it, Macon Kevin ends up on top, and Vieira just gets an armbar very quickly, and I was very impressed by that. And then I watched this matchup against Marcos Bruno, and that fight went into the second round. Kind of the same sort of situation, and Vieira gets the takedowns, but he's just so busy trying to look for submissions with his grappling. You know, he's just jumping for subs. The control's not really there. Bruno does manage to stand up a couple times, but Bruno's not really like a dangerous striker for Vieira to really worry about. So Vieira just starts throwing down with him pretty much throughout the fight. But I will say towards the end of the matchup, in the second half of the second round, Vieira's pace that he puts on is crazy, and it did slow down quite a bit in the second round. He didn't death gas or anything like that, but you could tell that he was getting a little bit tired. And then I watched his other LFA fight as well, and the same sort of problem that I think could come back to hurt him if he does fight someone a little bit better. It's just the fact that he has no control. He takes down Robson Minotto pretty early on in the matchup, and Minotto manages to stand back up again because Vieira is just hunting for subs. He's hunting for highlights, and then he has to try and take him down again, and he does. And Minotto, in this case, quite literally just gives up his neck, and Vieira does take it. So zero survival instinct from Minotto whatsoever in that fight, but yeah, Vieira capitalized, and I can tell you guys, he's a lot of fun. His striking's not amazing, you know, like he doesn't have great takedown defense, and I don't think his technique is great, but the aggression is there, the willingness to throw down is there, and I can't actually really say the same about his opponent, Carlos Cavalcante. Now, Cavalcante's got a little bit of a padded record. He hasn't really fought the best guys, but I was actually able to find a decent amount of tape on him, I would say. And from what I could see, Cavalcante, he doesn't really like striking. He just wants to get takedowns. And when he gets takedowns, he doesn't just kind of go for subs like an absolute madman or go for ground and pound like Vieira does. He likes to just kind of camp and control, camp in full mount, camp in not even full mount, just camp and guard, really, in top, and just kind of ground out decisions. So this could be an interesting stylistic matchup, because I would say both of these guys actually have similar but different styles. They're both grapplers, but they're both grapplers in different ways. They're both going to want the fight down to the ground. The reason why I do have a bit of confidence in Vieira is just the fact that he did show that he can get a submission off his back against Macon Kevin. And I do think that in this matchup, if Cavalcante even does get a takedown and looks for control, Vieira is just an absolute madman with the sub attempts. I think that he's going to look for subs off his back, and I think that we are going to see Vieira get a submission win in this fight. It is kind of hard to tell how far Vieira is going to be able to take this style, because it genuinely is just all in, looking for the finish as fast as I possibly can. But I think for now, very fun to watch, and I do think he does beat Cavalcante in this fight. And now we have Paulo da Silva fighting against Hugo Paiva. Now, you guys may or may not know, and if you know, you know what I'm about to say, and that is Hugo Paiva was one half of one of my favorite fights of all time, Felipe dos Santos versus Hugo Paiva. Whenever I break down a Felipe dos Santos fight, I mention this fight, and now I've got the opportunity to break down a Hugo Paiva fight on the channel, so I've got to mention this fight. This is a great fight. This is one of the best fights I've ever seen. I watched this live, actually, when I was watching an LFA card live, and I was amazed by it. And I still think about this fight relatively regularly. I will be honest, I think it's that good. Yeah, I just love it. It's great. And I will be honest, the thing is that kind of ruins it a little bit is I think there's a very good argument that Hugo Paiva did win, but Felipe dos Santos made it into the UFC. He's a lot of fun to watch, and I think that now Hugo Paiva could potentially make his way into the UFC as well. Paiva is a small guy for this weight class, and he does struggle a bit in the grappling. He does struggle with grappling defense, and he does struggle with takedown defense, I think. However, what he does very well is box, and this guy has a pretty insane amount of power in his hands. He's actually coming off a pretty sick KO win, and it does say punches, but he didn't really win this fight with a knockdown. What kind of happened was, I think Roldan, if I remember this correctly, Roldan fell over, and then Paiva kind of pounced on him, and it was just starting to land ground and pound, and then Roldan looked up at him and smiled, and then Paiva with his next ground and pound shot just knocked him out unconscious, cold, and it was kind of a hilarious win for our boy Hugo Paiva here. But he's a fun boxer. He's a very good boxer. The 2 losses that he's got are to 2 very, very good fighters. And I think in this matchup, he's going to be the better striker. Now, in full transparency, I couldn't find much tape on Paulo da Silva really at all. But I did watch a bunch of Instagram reels posted by him hanging out with Charles Oliveira. And the fights that I was able to find of him, Charles Oliveira was actually in his corner, which is kind of awesome. And he seems like a very aggressive fighter. Now, he doesn't have a knockout win, which is surprising to me because I was watching him fight, and he just runs forward into the pocket and just throws a lot of hooks and then looks for the takedowns from there. I'm surprised he's never caught any of these opponents with those punches before, because he has not fought good competition at all. But I do think that it would be fair to say that he's going to present an interesting test for Paiva, just given the fact that Paiva's biggest struggle in his career is that grappling defense. But I think out of these 2 guys, Paiva's shown that he can defend takedowns against guys that I do think are a bit better than Da Silva. And I think importantly, I think Paiva's the better striker in this fight. Paiva is a sick boxer, man. I think he's going to go out there and get a knockout in this fight. It looks like a lot of people are on the Da Silva side. Maybe that's the Charles Oliveira fellas, I don't know. But I like Paiva to win this one, man. I think that Paiva's boxing is going to be enough to defeat Paulo da Silva in this matchup. And now we have Rodrigo Vera fighting against Jonathan Caetano. Full transparency on the Caetano side, I couldn't find tape really on him at all. But on Rodrigo Vera, there is a lot on him because he does have a lot of his fights, nearly all of his fights actually posted on YouTube, because he does fight for this promotion FFC, which has a YouTube channel, and it's quite useful, I will be honest. Vera's interesting to me because he fights in a lot of different weight classes. He fights across 135 pounds and 145 pounds relatively regularly, which is why, despite holding the belt at 135 for FFC, he fights for the promotion and doesn't defend it. It's because he's fighting at 145. But I think it's just due to like lack of opponents, man. There's just nobody in Peru anymore for Rodrigo to fight. He's beaten everyone that could potentially have been a threat. He took the O off Rickson Zenadim, who's a good grappler, and he beat Rickson Zenadim in the grappling, which is what I think was quite most important about that matchup. And then since then, he hasn't really been fighting the best guys, but he's been beating them all in the exact same way, aside from Cleverson Luis, who he did knock out. Rodrigo Vera, he's a wrestler. What he does is he's just going to try and stall up against the cage, and when he gets his takedown, he's just going to try and stall up with the takedowns from there as well, by just camping inside control, camping and top control. I will admit, his fights really aren't that fun, which is a little bit of a shame, and maybe that's why he hasn't been signed. But at this point, he's 19-1. I think you've just got to give him a shot, you know what I mean? And the thing about Rodrigo Vera is his striking's pretty solid as well. He does have decent boxing. It doesn't look incredible, but it's definitely serviceable, and more often than not, he actually is the better striker in a lot of his matchups. But the way that he wins this fight, of course, is with the wrestling. He's taken on Jonathan Caetano. As I said, genuinely couldn't find any of his MMA tape. He's beaten a lot of guys with not the best records, but I was able to go onto his Instagram account, and if you go to his Instagram account, he posts results of grappling tournaments nearly every few weeks. So this guy's just always grappling, it seems. And I think that's going to be pretty interesting because, you know, Vera, the last time we saw him fight a grappler, he did beat Rickson Zenadim, and he looked pretty good doing it. So I think just kind of based on that, there is a lot of unknowns about Caetano. I know I didn't really break him down, but it's because I didn't really see anything from him. I think that Vera should be able to get the takedowns, should be able to camp inside control, do whatever it is that he needs to do, and win a decision in this matchup. And now we can move up to the co-main event of the evening. Joseilton Santos fighting against Carlos Petruzella. And I'm just going to say it how it is. 10-0 versus 13-0. I don't think this fight is quite as high level as those records do suggest. And I do have a heavy heart saying that out loud because I know that Carlos Petruzella's manager is going to be watching this video. I'm sorry, Martin. I'm sorry. But Carlos Petruzella, he's 13-0. He actually was signed to the Global Fight League, which obviously didn't end up happening. His fight against Lorenz Larkin would have been very interesting to see how he would go. But he's been fighting for Samurai Fight House, which is the big time the big time promotional show in Argentina. They subscribe to my channel. They comment on my channel on occasion as well. In fact, the first channel to recognize, the first promotion to recognize my channel, I should say, actually. So I've always got a good spot in my heart for Samurai Fight House. You know, I do love that channel. I do love that promotion. And they do host a lot of very good cards. In fact, their last card actually had a lot of the top prospects on it. But Carlos Petruzella obviously is one of those guys. He's 13-0. And to be honest, he has really built up a record, especially recently, in my opinion, over guys that he's definitely been expected to beat. Now, a lot of the fights did get cancelled, but still, this Gaston Palomino guy fell over, and Carlos Petruzella ground and pounded him out. That was really odd. But the real big red flag to me, I will be honest, is against Nicolas Martinez, because Nicolas Martinez just picked up and dumped Carlos Petruzella on the ground multiple times in this fight. Before obviously Petruzella got the finish in the first round, but I did not really like seeing that at all. And another concern that I have about Petruzella is his striking. You know, he just walks forward into the pocket, doesn't really throw anything, and he gets pressured backwards very easily. Like, he was biting on crazy feints from this Gaston Palomino guy. I know the fight didn't last long, but Petruzella was pressuring forward in the middle of the cage, and then Palomino would like threaten to throw a right hand, and Petruzella's back is up against the cage all of a sudden. So I don't really like the striking of Petruzella. It seems like he's not very confident on the feet, which I don't really love to see. But I don't think he's gonna need to worry about that too much against this Joseilton Santos guy, who also has a little bit of a record against guys that he's definitely been expected to beat. Fighting for demo fight, which doesn't have the best reputation. Let's be honest. I mean, you can just kind of look at the most recent card and just kind of see like what's going on here to kind of know what demo fight just kind of does. But anyway, Joseilton Santos, he's a very small welterweight. He's listed at 5'8" on Tapology. He might be taller than that, I don't know, but he is a Muay Thai champion in the in an area in Bahia, Brazil. So a regional Muay Thai champion and a regional wrestling champion in Bahia. And once again, couldn't really find these fights all that much, but I could, of course, look at his Instagram, look at his reels. And one thing that I can tell you about this fight is I do think that Santos is going to be the better striker out of the two. But when it comes down to the grappling and the wrestling, I do have to give Petruzella that grappling and wrestling edge, and a big size advantage is going to be on the Petruzella side, which I think could be quite important in this one here, when Santos hasn't really had to deal with a guy like Petruzella before. So kind of just based on that, I'm going to be picking Petruzella to win a decision in this one. I think he can use that size advantage to get the takedowns, to get the control going. But I do worry about the striking, man. And Santos is like a pretty dynamic guy. He does throw a lot of kicks. He does like to close the distance, and he does like to get takedowns and land a lot of ground and pound. The thing is, I just don't really know for sure if he's going to be able to hold down Carlos Petruzella. So I'm going to go Petruzella to win a decision in this fight here. And now we go to the main event. This is a fun one. This is a mirror matchup, actually, between two strikers that do not have good striking defense. And that is going to make for a fun fight. Inglesson Lara is actually very talented. I've been quite impressed with him recently, and then actually just looking at all of the fights back again to watch this one. I thought that he had a fantastic performance against Lucas Miletic. And Lucas Miletic is a guy who I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe he was actually expected to win. He was. Lara was the dog in that one, and Miletic has actually gone on to win a couple of fights for, of course, our friends at Samurai Fight House since then. But anyways, that was a big standout performance for me, in my opinion, was when he went out there and he boxed up Lucas Miletic. He looked good doing it. His takedown defense looked good as well. Miletic is a pretty decent grappler as well. And Inglesson Lara was able to keep the fight on the feet for most of that time. And despite getting tagged quite a bit by Miletic, he actually had a bit of a black eye going on with a cut underneath his eye. He was the one landing the better shots. He was the one landing the harder shots. And I thought that he looked pretty good doing it. Aside from that, I saw him get an absolutely insane first round KO win. I'm pretty confident it was this one here against Marlon Brito. I mean, yes, it was, because Centurion FC once again is on YouTube. So shout out to Centurion FC. Pretty fun promotion to watch. And he actually got this one done with a body shot. Marlon Brito threw up a roundhouse kick, and Inglesson Lara just dropped his hand and threw a real nice liver punch, and he actually took a couple of seconds for Brito to drop down to the ground from there. His one loss is against Akaro Brito, who I believe was meant to be on the Contender Series last year, and he wasn't. I think he's rumored to be on the Contender Series again. This is another Fighting Nerds guy who just has insane striking. He almost fights exactly like Mauricio Rufy, but I would almost say even more dynamic, if you can believe it. But yeah, Caro Brito, that's not a bad loss to have at all. He kind of just was outclassed at his own game. And speaking of being outclassed in your own game, I don't think he's going to get outclassed against Bruno Henrique. Bruno Henrique and Inglesson Lara, they fight nearly in the exact same way, except Henrique is going to have a big size disadvantage here. I think he's going to have a big power disadvantage here. And also being a pretty good striker, he also doesn't have very good striking defense. And I think when we go in a matchup between two strikers with bad striking defense, the guy that hits harder, I think, wins that matchup more times than not. I'm going to go with Inglesson Lara. The reason why, especially, I'm going to go with that is Bruno Henrique is a very inactive fighter. I don't really know why he's been taking so long in between his matchups. He actually does have a couple of very top wins on his record, but this matchup here, I will be honest, against Rogerio Ferreira, was not a good look for me. Rogerio Ferreira, especially in the second round before the finish, actually was landing pretty good boxing combinations on Bruno Henrique. Henrique was just Henrique was scrapping with him for no reason. These guys were both throwing down, and Ferreira was landing. Like Henrique should not be throwing down with this level of opponent. No disrespect to Ferreira, but you know, you're 17-4, you're 18-4. You shouldn't be dealing with these guys in somewhat close fashion. I know he got the finish, but trust me, this fight was way more close than it should have been. I think in a matchup between two strikers, two guys that I mean, one guy hits way harder than the other, in my opinion. Lara does. Bad striking defense for both guys. Henrique's going to have a shot. He always will. And I think Lara gets it done, though. I think Lara actually gets it done by knockout in this matchup. He hits pretty hard. He can mix it to the body. I like him in this fight. The thing about Inglesson Lara is I do believe that if he wins this matchup, he's definitely going to be on the Contender Series. There's no doubt about that in my mind. It's just that I think that if he gets into the UFC and he starts to fight better strikers, like, I mean, just kind of off the top of my head, I know this is like a top 15 guy right now, but Myron Santos, I think would be a nightmare matchup for Inglesson Lara, for example. I think guys that, you know, like Kevin Vallejos even, guys that hit hard, guys that have good accuracy, I think that they're going to be pretty tough matchups for Lara to deal with. But Lara is a good striker with good takedown defense. The striking defense is a big concern for me, but that can always get better with time. I like Lara in this matchup. I like Lara by KO. Let me know what you think of the card overall. I think this is a good one, and I'm very much looking forward to it. And I will see you guys in the next one.